Remember when the pandemic started? Toilet paper was fought over. Meat aisles were empty across supermarkets around the country, and a lot of panic set in.
We are strong and we can make it, but we have to unite.
For most Americans, the panic buying has stopped, and things have for the most part calmed down. But for millions of others, things have gotten way worse.
The largest food bank network in the country, the Feed America Food Bank, already says that they will fall short by $1.4 billion this year.
Food insecurity has gotten a lot of attention during the pandemic, and this is something that's going to, if things aren't drastically changed in the world, is set to get worse, for sure.
We like to talk about this and use the metaphor of the perfect storm.
The UN estimates we're going to see 132 million more people going hungry because of the pandemic, and specifically because of the pandemic.
Even though we're only 8 months into this, this is our new normal, and I think that we take it day by day.
In America, the richest nation on earth, food insecurity has hit at least 52 million people, an increase of 17 million people from pre-pandemic times.
That's a mind-boggling number for the richest country in the world. And it really does come down to whether people have enough money to eat.
Those obstacles are because of how farms, the government, and the supply chain all worked before the pandemic and needed to adjust to a new world. And whether or not they can is the difference between whether millions of people will go to bed hungry in the coming months or not.
When the only constant in life is change, you need to be ready. This is the ManMadeSurvival Show.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the ManMadeSurvival Show. My name is Jose Prado and I'm very glad to be here with you because there is more information that has come out that I believe is very important. And this podcast is going to be it's going to be a very long podcast, but I'm going to be dividing it into 4 different parts, about an hour each. And I really do encourage you to listen to all of them because all that information is connected. Okay. And the reason that I'm doing it this way is just because there's just so much information coming out very rapidly every hour. And to cover each individual one, it's almost impossible because as soon as you get ready to put some information together, some other information comes up updated, and it's almost like it makes it old news within the hour. So that is what I'm going to be attempting here, is that I'm going to give you all this information. It's going to be coming out this week, each day. And I really do hope that you start looking at this information and not only sharing it with your friends and family, but do something about it. Okay, I do understand that there's a lot of preppers out there getting ready for things that could be happening. But the majority of the population, they're still waiting for things to become better and still relying on the government to do its job to make sure that the supply chain does not go anywhere and that our standard of living stays the same or improves, right? That's exactly what the Biden administration is saying that they're planning on doing. This is the reason why they're passing stimulus, and they have all this spending that they want to do. They want to improve certain sectors by throwing money at it. And in some cases, it would work, but now we're reaching a point where other countries are no longer being, I guess you could say, confident in the U.S. dollar anymore. And they're going to be looking for different ways to offset the day that the United States dollar no longer is accepted as the global world currency. Okay, so that is one of the things that we're going to be talking about in this video. So for me, this video is going to be about, 3 to 4 hours long, but for you, it's going to be divided into those separate sections. All right. I do plan on being 4 different videos. So I do encourage you to come back each day and look at that video because that information is going to be on there. And as I said, I'm going to wrap it all up at the end. So that's why it's important for you to listen to each individual one each day so you can get the bigger picture of all the things that's going on. So I really do hope that I'm able to do that for you here in this podcast. And I really want to say a thank you to everyone who has sent me messages, who has commented on the videos. I can see the matrix on the podcast in speaker platform, on YouTube, on Brighteon, and all the others, and I can see that people are watching, they're listening, and they do appreciate the work that I'm doing here for you and I, and those are the things that I really look for, because I do want people to get this information. And not only that, the steps that we have to take each and every day for us to become a better community of preppers and really revolutionize what prepping is, what has become in the past year. Because as I've mentioned in the past, right, prepping became very selfish, and it was something that developed over time, especially because of the events that were going on. And of course, there's people who have been crying wolf for a long time, and they have not done so, out of any kind of evil intent or anything like that, because most of the information that they're giving away, it is, actually devastating. It is something that could turn out to be if things continue to be the same. And some things have not happened, some things have happened, or other things are going on very, very slowly. So it is not that people are sounding the alarm and being over dramatic about things. It's just that things are working slower because there's a group of people, right, in government levels, individual levels, in organizations, in charities and stuff like that, who are working very hard around the clock, especially in this country and throughout the world, to make sure that not only the supply chain does not collapses, but also that the standard of living of people, especially in America, continues to at least be the same or get better. Of course, the economic devastation that we're seeing, the food hunger that we're seeing, all the things that have developed in the past few weeks have really put us in a position where we can no longer wait and look and leave it up to those organizations and government entities to really make life easier for us. All right. So yes, we do have to make sure that we continue living our life without having to worry too much about many things, right? Because there's a lot of things going on. But it is important for you to stay informed and do things and position yourself in a way that is going to help you and your family at the end. Because even if things delay for another 10 years, what you're going to be prepping for right now and all the things that you're going to be doing at this moment are only going to help you later on. Because certain parts of prepping are very slow, especially if you're trying to become self-sufficient. It all depends on how much money you got. If you don't have much money, if you're on the lower rungs of the economic ladder, it's going to be a lot slower for you to be able to develop the lifestyle of a prepper as compared to someone who is wealthy or has much more money than you, and they can just purchase things and get things set up very quickly. So that is the reason why I want to redefine, revolutionize, bring the respect back to the prepper community that has been for a long time eroding away because of certain things that some other people have been reporting or the way that they're presented, So that is the reason why I believe that in this community of preppers, we take a different approach to prepping. So if you want to be part of that, I really appreciate it. Just continue to share these videos, continue to listen, like the videos, subscribe to the channels, leave comments, stuff like that. That is going to position us in the future to have a better outcome. And, I have a lot of plans that I want to do for this prepper community that would be a lot bigger than we have ever seen come out of the prepper community since it was, founded. But, of course, that needs a lot of money. And that is quite simply something that I don't have. But slowly but surely we will get there. So the one thing that I really need from you is not for you to make a donation or really to purchase anything from the store, but rather share this information with your friends and family. Because the more people come together in this channel and they share it, and we become we come to know each other, we were gonna be able to know that we are not alone in this, okay, and that we're gonna be taking the steps that I do believe that this community needs to take. So please share this information with your friends and family. Share this with everybody on all your social media, because it's very important. And I really do want to thank the people on the comment section who have actually told me that they have done that they shared this podcast with their friends and family on their social media. And thanks to that, we have more traffic. I can see it in the matrix, I can see it on the statistics. So I really do appreciate you, and I want to thank you for that. I also want to give a shout out specifically to Amber, one of the community members. Thank you for sending me that email about that, that TV show, not TV show, but the Netflix exclusive. I did watch it, and I do want to kind of touch bases on that. And again, I appreciate it. If you want to send me any type of information, or you want to communicate with me, you can send me an email to ManMadeSurvival@gmail.com. So again, that's ManMadeSurvival@gmail.com. You can, send me links. You can give me any information that you want to give me. I really do appreciate it, because, that just makes it easier for me to see that this community of preppers is starting to become closer together. All right. So let's get into this podcast, because this podcast is one of the more important ones, because it really is going to give you the bigger picture of things that's going on. All right, because I do believe that there's people who just focus on that one thing that's going on, and they want to prep for that without really thinking long term. Because in the prepper community, right, we have been accustomed of thinking, what can I buy? I need this, I need that. But really what I want us to do is not just so much focus on how much can we consume, how much can we spend, but rather what can we produce? Because really in the long term, that is what is going to make us be above and beyond people who are going to be suffering during this economic collapse, during the food riots, during what we're seeing with the government right now, with the potential of war and all these things. So I really do think that time is near, but we don't know exactly when it's going to happen. So that is the reason why you have to take steps right now. And that is that's what we're going to be talking about today. So the first headline that I have for you is from the economiccollapseblog.com. And, they always have great articles. But really, I wanted to start with this first article because it kind of gives a broad assessment of what could be happening in 2021. Because a lot of people are becoming more edgy, because we were promised that as soon as the vaccines were going to come out, that pretty much life was going to be going back to normal, right? But quite the opposite has actually been happening. Not only has things gotten a little bit worse than they were just a month ago, they are telling us that it's not going back to normal anytime soon, even if they do give us the vaccine. All right, so let's go ahead and get into this article. The title of it is, "Why are so many Americans stockpiling guns, silver, and food right now?" As I mentioned, that's from the economiccollapseblog.com. We were told that 2021 would be the year when everything starts to get back to normal. That hasn't been exactly the case, has it? It has been just over a month, and there's still chaos everywhere. We have seen a wild ride at the U.S. Capitol. Civil unrest has been erupting in major cities from coast to coast. Millions of people have filed for unemployment benefits, and the president was impeached. And a crazy ride on Wall Street made GameStop a national phenomenon. That would normally be enough for an entire year, but we are still in the first week of February. All throughout history, there has been critical turning points when events have greatly accelerated, and it appears that we have reached one of those turning points. In fact, this may turn out to be the biggest turning point of them all. Millions upon millions of Americans can sense that big trouble is ahead. For many, it is like a gut feeling that they just can't shake. Just a few days ago, my wife met a woman from the West Coast that just moved here. The woman and her husband were desperate to leave California, and they felt very strongly that they should move somewhere safe. What makes her story remarkable is that the fact that my wife and I have heard similar stories from other countless times over the past 12 months. Our nation is being shaken in thousands of different ways, and so many of us can feel that things are building up to some sort of grand crescendo. So that is why many Americans are stockpiling guns, silver, and food right now. They want to be ready for what is ahead. I would strongly encourage you to use this current period of relative stability to get prepared for the very uncertain times that are ahead of us. Everything that can be shaken will be shaken, and our society will soon be turned completely upside down. All right, and now that I have read that to you, I really do appreciate that articles like this are out there. But what I'm going to attempt to do in this podcast is not only give you the broad aspect of it, but I do want to talk about specific things that's going on, all right, in the food sector, in our economy, what's going on with the government right now, and what could happen globally. And all that is going to be tied together. So that's what I'm going to be doing in this podcast. We're going to be looking at these different things that are all happening at the same time. Okay, because all these things, like one thing is going on, meanwhile, another thing is going on. Meanwhile, a second and third are there, or a third and fourth are there, right? So we really need to pay attention to this and really focus on what is going to be our trajectory so we can get prepared, right? We can see these events unfolding almost in an orderly fashion because they're all happening at the same time. You know, you can draw conclusions because of A is happening, B is going to happen like this, and then C and D are going to follow. So because we can see all of these things going on at the same time, we can prepare for all of them to go down a certain way because they're all going to have the same bottom line. The food supply chain will be disrupted, okay? That's why I teach you here in ManMadeSurvival in this community of preppers that you no longer have to worry about the one event that's going to happen because there's many of them happening at the same time. But rather, what is the common denominator from all of these? And all of these is the supply chain. Because if food prices continue to rise, and they have been rising in the past few days, or technically in the past few weeks, I'm going to be talking about this, but we're on the 7th, going to the 8th consecutive month that food prices have soared. And not only that, what's happening with the money printing, what is happening with the government, talking about, domestic terrorism, and all of that is going to boil down to us possibly going to war. Okay, and I'm going to share all of that with you, and I'm going to tie it all together. That's what's important for you to listen to all of this all the way to the end. All right, get all the information that I'm going to be giving to you. So right now, I want to start with food because as you saw in the video that I started this podcast with, it's pretty much telling us not to worry so much now because people are not panic buying anymore. Things are kind of going back to quote unquote normal in some degree. And even though that organizations and the government and other people are working around the clock to make sure that the supply chain does not collapse, even if they can somehow make sure that the supply chain continues on, when the economy gets to a certain point where you can no longer afford the food, it doesn't matter how much is at the grocery store, okay, you won't be able to buy it. Of course, it can happen like Venezuela where people just raided the places, but it will get to a point where these shelves will be empty for a very long time. The government will take over the supply chain, and they're going to distribute the food as they see fit. Okay, that's exactly what happens in all the countries that go into civil unrest because of food happening. So I want to read this next headline because people have been saying that just because things are happening in the United States where we are seeing, weather being crazy or the pandemic has really slowed down the supply chain, they think that it doesn't mean that other places around the world that we trade with, they're having a bad time. But I'm here to show you that, yes, they are having a bad time. And the United Nations is also doing what they can do for the people who in other countries are also going to be hungry. All right, so the next headline comes from usnews.com. And it reads, World Food Program Chief warns of vulnerable supply chains. The head of the World Food Program said Wednesday that the COVID-19 pandemic highlighted the need to strengthen vulnerable supply chains to impoverished nations struggling to feed their populations. David Beasley, Executive Director of the United Nations Nobel Peace Prize winning food program, said that the pandemic put further stress on supply chains getting food to the hungry. Quote, if you think you've had trouble getting toilet paper in New York because of supply chain disruptions, what do you think's happening in Chad, in Niger, in Mali, and places like that? With 270 million people on the brink of starvation, if we don't receive the support and the funds that we need, you will have mass famine, starvation, you have destabilization of nations, and you have mass migration. And the cost of that is 1,000 times more. The world will not be able to help, okay? Because they are having their own problems in their own country. The United Nations, they are going to work around the clock trying to find food to be able to export to those places. So what do they need? They need funding. They're going to need funding from the United States, from NATO nations, even probably from Asia, from the European Union, from other places. But here's the thing. All those countries, for the exception of Russia and China, very interestingly enough, they are not having troubles with, the other countries are having problems with their economies, with debt, all right, with food inflation, with all these issues, because all of this is tied together. Food and the economy are tied together. So if we are spending, the United States is currently spending its way into oblivion, and so is the EU. What is going to happen when those two major donors to the UN are no longer able to give the money? And of course, China and Russia would either A, be forced to pick up the tab, or B, they're just going to throw their hands up and say, we cannot afford this. What is going to happen to those 270 million people? All right, and not counting people in America, not counting people in the EU, not counting people in other places around the world who are going through the exact same thing. All right, so that is what we have to really think about all of this. Yes, the United States is the most rich country in the world, but the only reason that we're so rich is because we can print money out of thin air with nothing backed. And we are able to really enjoy those things right now, but eventually it's going to stop. What you have to do here in the United States, or if you're in any, rich country, you really need to position yourself to be able to be self-sufficient and not really be dependent on the government. So what do you really have to look at? All right, this is the quick prepping in all of this. The major part of it is that you are located in a place that is going to give you continuous water. Right, that is key right there. If right now you live in an apartment, if you have a house in only 1 acre in some subdivision, I really do encourage you to sell or try to find a place where you can change your address, right? For you to sell your house, or, just get into the process of buying a home right now, especially if you're still working, even though the pandemic stuff is going on, because there's millions of people who are still working, even though there's millions and millions who are not working at the moment. But if you're part of the group of people who are in the millions, who are still working, and you're able to take up a mortgage, and you still kind of have job stability because of where you're at working right now, I really do encourage you that if you're going to either sell your house or you're going to take up a mortgage, for you to go to a place where you're going to have a piece of property that's going to have water running through it all the time. And the reason being is because you're going to have to start making building your own farm. That is going to be either for you and your alliance, or it's going to be for you and your community. Okay, this is where the prepper community for ManMadeSurvival comes together. We have to make sure that we get into a position where we're going to be able to help people in the future, because we're going to be seeing the same exact thing that happened not only in Zimbabwe, in Venezuela, but it's happening in other African countries. We're going to see food starvation go up. All right, and we're going to have to be the ones as a prepper community under ManMadeSurvival flag of saying, you know what, we took these steps. We're going to be able to grow this many crops, and we're going to be able to share it in our local community. All right, you're not going to become a target of everybody around you, but rather they're going to see you as someone who has to be protected, as someone who is helping everybody else, especially if you're able to do it under a Christian, guideline, or not guideline, direction, maybe that's the right word I'm trying to say. The point is that you not only can you share the food that you have with you and start making other people have their own little farm going on, but you also can share the gospel in that way. And that's going to make a bigger impact in those people's lives, because you're going to be showing them what a real Christian is going to be like in time of crisis, rather than being a selfish prepper who's just waiting for someone to pop around the corner and you pop them with your gun. All right, that is the difference between other preppers out there and what I'm trying to show you here under the ManMadeSurvival flag. So I really hope that you want to be part of this community, because if I was able if I was able to really start expanding communities of preppers all throughout the country, I would do it. But we can only take baby steps, and this is one of them. All right, and that is why I'm sharing this with you. I want you to be part of a bigger purpose that I'm trying to do here. So that is the reason why I really need to share this with you, or I need you to share this with everybody that you know, because we need to become a connected community of preppers, even though we're split. We're spread all throughout the country and spread all throughout the world, because I have a lot of people listening to me from other places around the globe, Netherlands, in Saudi Arabia, in African countries, in South and North America. Like this podcast has been going on to a lot of people. And as I mentioned in the past, in a month, I can muster about 10,000 people all throughout the social medias that we have. But that really has to increase rapidly and exponentially, because we need to get this message out, and we have to get people start prepping right now. All right, because we don't know when something is going to happen to the point where society just goes crazy. All right, even though things are going on right now, there's still law and order to a degree. But the point is that we're not running around in a Mad Max scenario where people are just going crazy everywhere. So that is why it's important for us to take the steps right now and really plan. If you're in North America right now, if you're in the United States, in Canada, and even Mexico, we're in our winter period right now, and we're very close to being for springtime to start. I really do believe that the 59 million Americans who are going to be hungry in the next few months, who have food insecurity, they should all become farmers in the next month or two. But all of that takes planning, and it takes money. So even if you don't have any money right now, the money that the government is promising to bring to you, you should really use that for you to be able to make sure that you have your own supply chain started in your own backyard. That is going to be the opportunity, the gift that the government is going to give you. So do not squander it trying to buy, video games or consoles or anything like that, and really use it to make sure that you set yourself up for, you can put down the money for a mortgage somewhere in a rural country. You can, if you're already in an area where you have, a piece of land, you can start putting farm animals there. You can start building chicken coops and your garden and stuff like that. You can start buying all the tools that you're gonna need. Because if it does pass like the way they're trying to say that it's going to, which I'm gonna be sharing with you here in this podcast, then all that money is going to be money that, for one, you didn't have to begin with. And if you don't need to pay your bills and to pay rent, stuff like that, and it's gonna go into your savings account, I really do encourage you for you to use it to where you're going to make sure that your own supply chain is in your own backyard. So that's why it's important for you to take the steps of planning at this moment on what you're going to be doing in the spring and summer. All right. So now we talked about the poor countries, right? There's many poor countries, and there's only a handful of nations who you can say that are wealthy. But now we're going to be moving on to the second biggest economy in the entire world. And even though there's things going on in China that is going to really be, I guess you can say, contradicting, that doesn't mean that the government will not have the resources that they're going to need in order for them to do what they want to do. All right, because what we know, as we have seen in Venezuela, Zimbabwe, Germany and all those, as I've shared with you in the past, is that just because those countries go through an economic collapse doesn't mean that those governments no longer exist. Venezuela is still around. Germany is still around. Zimbabwe is still around. The flag does not change as much as the system does. Okay? In Germany, back when it went into hyperinflation, Germany did not fall apart. What they did is they reformed. They took a different approach, and now they're one of the wealthiest nations in the EU. Venezuela, if it wasn't for the U.S. sanctions, they would pretty much be closer to having a stable economy as opposed to what they're going through right now. Okay, and the same thing can be said by others. So if the United States, if the European Union, if even China, for whatever reason, their citizens are suffering a degree of starvation or an economic collapse or whatever the case may be, that doesn't mean that the government is going to go away, okay? Because, and the reason I want to say that is because as I'm going to be sharing with you in this article, the Chinese people are going to be going through a hard time here in the next few months, just like we are. But that is not stopping the government from taking steps into becoming the world reserve currency, as I'm going to be talking about in here in the podcast. So let's go ahead and get into this one. And the reason I wanted to share that with you, or, explain that to a degree, is because we are seeing two different two different economies popping up, as we see here in the United States. The rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer, right? But just because the poor are getting poorer and they're having a bad time, that doesn't mean that the rich are not still going to be able to live their life. Even if we have food inflation, it doesn't hurt their pocket. They're millionaires, they're billionaires, right? If they're, let's say their food cost is $1,000 a month, if it goes up another $1,000, it's not going to hurt them. They're still going to eat caviar and they're going to eat, the expensive steaks and all those things. But for you and me, that is very devastating. That's why we have to make sure that we take the steps right now to make sure that we have a better future, not only for us, but for our family, our alliance, and for our future generations. Because this prepper community, these prepper principles can be shared from generation to generation, right? The article comes from moderndiplomacy.eu, and the title of it is China is on the brink of a food crisis. Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, the FAO, warned about the emerging food shortages worldwide. According to FAO statistics, global food prices have been on the rise for 4 consecutive months, hitting their maximum in September 2020. China, in the place where the virus originated, is one of the states that has been seriously affected by disruptions, including production and distribution of food. The National Bureau of Statistics of China reported that, on average, food prices have increased by 11.2% compared to 2019. The price levels of vegetables increased by 64.4% in 1 month. Egg prices soared by 11.3% within the same time period. Pork prices grew the most by 52.6% compared to last year's statistics. Why is that important? One of the main factors contributing to the decline in agricultural productivity and spiking food prices in China is the restrictions on personal mobility and transportations of goods. Such restrictions impacted food supply chains. For the production part, many workers experienced difficulties getting to work that created shortages of physical labor. That is why some crops were not picked and others were not even planted. As a result, the supply of agricultural goods decrease in China. Okay, so very, very important that I share that with you because of this that I want to point out. All right, it's giving you how much of percentage each, I guess you can say, part of the supply chain increased. Okay, there was the vegetables grew by 6.4% in 1 month. Egg prices soared by 11.3% within the same period. Pork prices pretty much grew by 50.6%. Why do I say that? And why did I want to share that with you? Not only are the Chinese people going to go through a difficult time and they're going to have less food in their pantry, but all of these things that increase, those can be grown in your own backyard. That's why I keep harping the supply chain. That's why I keep saying that we can no longer be a community of preppers who are just thinking of what can we buy, but rather we need to transform our thinking into what can we produce. Okay, because if we do not go in that direction, we are going to suffer the food increase. All right, you can have vegetables in your own backyard, of course, provided that you have the proper terrain for them. You can have a barn that is full of animals that's going to give you the food, the things that you're gonna eat every day. I mean, if you already buy eggs every week from the grocery store, getting a chicken or two is going to give you the same supply of eggs for a lot less money. Okay, and of course, that's just assuming that it's just for your family, for your alliance, and for a broader, amount of people, you're gonna need more. But the point is that if you have the space, if you prepare properly, you're gonna be able to offset the expenses and the food the food inflation by growing these things in your own backyard. All right, the vegetables, you can have a garden big enough to supply you all throughout the year, and for you to have enough to put up and save it throughout the winter months. All right, and you can have the animals such as you can have the chickens, you can have the goats, you can have the sheep, you can have the rabbits, you can even have the pork. Raise it, slaughter it, and preserve it to where it's going to feed you all throughout the year as well. Okay, that's why it's important for you to prepare in a way that is going to be focused on what you can actually produce and not consume. As far as, going to the store is concerned. You can offset the prices right now by becoming a small farmer in your own land this coming spring. Okay, you have a few weeks to do it. And I've been saying this exact same point throughout this podcast for months now. All right, when the realization came to me that we can no longer afford to just buy and store, we have to make sure that we produce. That is what I have been doing, focusing in my preparedness and the things that I have told other people. And now that I think about it, funny story real quick. I share with people that I trust, right, that I'm a prepper. And of course, in some cases, it's no longer a secret because, I have a podcast. But, I'm not famous or anything like that, especially where I'm from. The people where I live, they couldn't care less. And I've actually told people from my church that they needed, I was going to give them advice on prepping, but I was dismissed very quickly. So, whatever. But with other people who do take the time to listen to me, they actually pointed something out that I found to be very funny. They said that I was sounding like I wanted to become Amish. And I had never thought about it that way. But even though that there is a big distinction between a prepper and somebody who's Amish, we really have to kind of learn from them because, they do things on their own. They do grow their own crops. They do make their own butter. They do make their own milk. They do make everything on their own. They have no technology. Where an Amish person and a prepper will really be set aside is from technology. As far as I understand the Amish community, which of course I don't have, this great understanding, but the general consensus is that they do not believe in technology, but we do. Here in the prepper community, we do. We love technology, and as I've said in the past, I really do like the supply chain. I do like the grid. The grid gives us comfort. It gives us, a lot of, how can I say it? It gives us a lot of comfort. It gives us a lot of things that we need. All right, we don't have to work so hard to be able to grow vegetables and have animals and all those things. You're right. We can just go to the grocery store. We get entertainment by just going to the movies. So, that was a thing in the past. But the point is that the grid is very, very nice. It's very comfortable. It gives you everything you need. All you have to do is go to work, pay your bills, and continue living on your life. But the Amish people, they, as far as I know, they make their own food and stuff like that. And they don't like technology. We do. I really do believe that if we, as a prepper community, try to have an off-grid lifestyle, it's going to be worse for us in the future because history has told us time after time that the people who do not have the proper technology, they're going to be run over by people who have bigger technology or better technology. And we're seeing it here in the United States right now. So if you're a prepper, don't think in the lines of, I just want to be off grid, have a simple life, and just, be left alone. That is not going to happen, especially what's going on here recently. But rather, we should have the technology advancements in our preps, because technology, as the way this is going, is very beneficial for the preppers. Very, very beneficial. We cannot try to become primitive, because then we're going to lose at the end. As I shared with you when I did the podcast about the Great Reset in, the World Economic Forum, they said very specifically that there's going to be two groups of people. One is going to be the people who are in the system. All right, they're going to have everything for free, but they're going to be surveillance 24/7. And then the people who do not want to be part of the system, they're going to be outside the system, being very, very poor. So if we're looking at this, right, people who have everything for free, they have technological advances, and they're going to be surveillanced all the time. People who do not, they believe that they won't have any type of technological advances of any sort. They're just going to be dirt poor, and they're going to be living pretty much in shacks. Excuse me. So that is the reason why I do believe that we as a prepper community do have to not only look at how technology is advancing, but also implementing it for our benefit. All right. So that is why I do believe that the AI brain is a good thing depending on who is controlling it. All right. Technology has always been neutral. It depends on who's using it, whether it's good or bad. If we can somehow have the technological advances in our favor, we can have a good trajectory to being in a very good position when things go down. Right? For example, cameras. That's a technology that we can use. You know, we have cameras all throughout the property. We can see who's coming in, who's coming out, who's trying to hide. You know, who's going around the perimeter trying to see our weak defenses and stuff like that. You know, other technologies can help us like that. You know, like flashlights and spotlights and all those things. All that is technology. If we can advance it to where it's going to help us to prepare for a future that we're really going to need it, where the government or maybe world entities are trying to make us poor and or trying to take our things away, we can withstand it, probably fight it, but even if we can't, to be able to position ourselves to where even if they do take most of the things that we have away, we still have technology in our favor. All right, so that is just a little bit of comparison I wanted to do. So let me see what I got here. Okay, so this next headline, okay, it's important because it just proves my point even more, because we have world event real-time cases, real-time data that if you depend on the government, it's going to be bad for you in the long run. Okay, and I'm not gonna go too much into detail in this article, because you know what the people are saying on their own is pretty much gonna be self-evident. But you can go and read this headline. I really do encourage you, so you can get this information and look at all of it. All right, like I've always said here, I cannot put the entire article on here because it would take forever. I do encourage you to get the headline. That's why I give you the headline, where it comes from, so you can go read the entire articles and get the bigger picture. All right, this one says coronavirus pandemic. Tonghua residents await food supplies under lockdown. This from news.cgtn.com. And it says residents in the city of Tonghua in northeastern China, Jilin province, have been living under the tight pandemic controls mode since last Monday. Earlier it was reported that residents there were short of basic provisions and daily necessities. San Yuan spoke to a few residents to find out the latest situation there. Quote, the sudden decision to lock down the communities in Tonghua without prior warning sparked intense online outrage. The measures caught many residents off guard, leaving them unprepared. Keyword. A college student who lived in the suburb of Tongwan told CGTN he has been trapped at home for about a week. Suyong students trapped in Tongwan said, some workers sealed my door with paper strips at around 1 o'clock in the morning. I had some instant noodles and several potatoes at home. There was no time or notice to allow me to buy food in advance. Okay, so the reason I wanted to keep that short is because just what they're saying on their own tells you that this is the reason why you have to be prepared. The same thing happened in Hong Kong. People went to bed, and when they woke up, they were already under lockdown. They had barriers in the streets so people couldn't go anywhere. And whatever they had at home to eat, that's all they had. So that's why it's important for you to have things at home, because what if the military suddenly closes everything up for whatever reason, you know, just random scenario, and they tell you that whatever you have at home, that's what you have to eat, and they're going to try to give provisions to the residents around the area as fast as they can. But in the meantime, you have to sit and wait. How long can you wait for them to bring the food to your house? All right. For these people in China, they didn't even have a week's worth. There's even more quotes in there of people who were already hungry. They were already pretty much having a bad time because they didn't have anything to eat. Some people went a few days without eating before the The volunteers brought food to their door, but the point is that is exactly the reason why you have to be prepared with everything you need already, because you never know what's going to happen. Now, of course, there's a lot of people in China, over 1.4 billion people, and the cities all throughout China, they're mega cities. Okay, they as far as I understand it, one city in China could have the exact same population as New York, California, and other major cities combined there, in China, as we have in the United States. So, of course, for them, it's going to be a lot more difficult, probably. I don't know the situation in China, of them to trying to go to a rural area and have their own crops and have a prepper lifestyle there. Is it possible? I have no idea. Will the Chinese government mess with them because of it? I don't know. But the point is that if they have the ability to do it, if you're listening to this in China, I really do encourage you to take up the prepper lifestyle. Try to move out of the major city, as far as you can, to where you can still have, the standard of living that you're used to, and try to have your own crops. The main thing you want is a property big enough for you to have, your farm animals, to have your garden, a big enough garden for you and your family, your alliance, and for it to have water running all the time. That's the top 3 things that you want in a property. All right, so I hope you get to do that if you live there, if you, for some reason, or, you happen to listen to this podcast. So that brings us up to what China is doing, okay? Like I mentioned in the previous article, China, because of the lockdowns and mobility, they're having a lot of issues with agriculture, okay? They were not able to really take the stuff out of the ground, pick it, and they were not able to put seed down on the ground for the next harvest. So what are they doing? What is the Chinese government doing? Because, they're looking at this problem and they're saying we have to do something about it. Even though they're Chinese Communist Party or, country, they still have to take care of their people. And they try to do that, even though they have so many people, there's still something that they have to take care of, because otherwise they have a revolution in their hands. So China is looking at other countries all throughout the world, and they're buying vast amounts of food. They have been going everywhere to try and find exactly what they can buy from other countries. They're buying from the United States vast amounts of food. They're going to Argentina. They're going to Brazil. They're going to other countries in the EU. They're going everywhere trying to buy as much food as they can. The main thing that they're trying to buy is soy. They're trying to buy corn. They're trying to buy wheat. They're trying to buy oil seeds. They're trying to buy a bunch of stuff because they have to feed their population. As we saw in the article, the reason that the price of pork rose so much is because they had the swine flu that pretty much took off half of their livestock in pork. That is a big amount when it comes to pork, because there's just so many people. So what did they do? They were forced to buy from outside. They bought a lot from the United States. They bought a lot from other countries. They bring it to their country so food prices can kind of stabilize. Because of those things happening there, food prices skyrocketed, as I showed you a minute ago. So because of all their buying in other countries, especially here in the United States, it has made the food prices increase as well, because there's just so much demand coming from China that is starting to take away from us. Okay, we're sending so much over there. We're not sending just the extras that we have after we already cover the U.S. population. They're starting to buy all the extra plus what we have in this country, making the prices go up. All right, so I have this article from Zero Hedge, and the title is "Massive Chinese Buying Spree Sends Corn Prices to Highest Since 2013." U.S. corn futures are continuing to soar, hitting a 7.5-year high on Monday. The bullish continuation in prices is the result of massive corn sales to China last week, according to Reuters. Chicago Board of Trade March contracts are up 1.23% to $5.53 per bushel, to levels not seen since 2013. Germany's Commerce banks commented on the latest price action in corn, saying, quote, "Chinese demand for corn remains robust, and unfavorable weather in South America," end quote, are some of the bullish catalysts lifting prices. On Friday, the USDA reported China purchased 2.108 million tons of corn, the second largest daily sale on record. The largest sale was in 1991 to the USSR, where U.S. grain traders sold 3.72 million tons in one day. Last week, U.S. sales to China totaled 3.74 million tons. That's just in 1 week, making it one of the biggest U.S. corn exports weeks on record. So here's the bad news. Food inflation is rapidly rising. The Food and Agriculture Organization's food price index showed that prices in December rose for a 7th consecutive month. All right, so the reason that it rose is because of all this buying from China. Okay, they're buying so much that we're starting to give them what we have for us. And that is going to just increase as the weeks come along because they have so many people to feed. Keep that in mind because that is going to be very important later on in this podcast. And of course, like I mentioned a minute ago, this is going to be broken down into different podcasts. So make sure you listen to all of them. Okay. Now, as far as the weather is concerned, okay, you're going to be seeing this video that I'm playing as a talk because the weather has become very cold here in the United States. And the reason that I want to point that out is because I have shared with you when this podcast first started, when I started talking about these issues, was that in 2019, we were 2 million tons under the goal for the United States agricultural output because of weather. There was so much snow, so many cold days that pretty much disrupted the crops that were already on the ground. The farmers could not even pick them out of the ground. And not only that, whatever they could get, it was not, I guess you can say it was not acceptable to be sold out out to the public. So as you saw there in the screen, right, I've been playing it on loop, is how cold the weather has been pretty much, Midwest all the way to the East Coast, down into Florida. In this place in Florida there's places in Florida who are experiencing colder weather they have ever seen before. So of course, when we talk about the climate, yes, it's changing, right? There's things happening, but it's not going so much as how the mainstream media wants to play it. Things are getting colder, and that is going to make big problems for our farmers in the future. So if in 2018 for 2019 crop being, taken out of the ground, if the weather in those years was really bad, all right, to where we were 2 million tons under what we needed, what is happening right now is even colder than happening in those days in a much wider spectrum of the country, and it's going to affect the crops for next year. Just watch for the headlines to come out and talk about exactly what I just said. And it's not that I have some type of magic ball or anything. It's because we can look into the past and see what happened compared to what's going on right now and what we're going to see coming into the future. So all of this involves critical thinking. And we have to start thinking critically about the things that we're seeing right now and where they're going. All right, that is the key here. So with weather doing that, also the economy has an impact on all of this, okay? And this is the last headline for this podcast. This is also from SearHedge. Food price inflation accelerates for 7th consecutive month. Is it time to worry about food inflation? The Food and Agricultural Organization Food Price Index rose for a 7th consecutive month in December, led by dairy products and vegetable oils. The benchmark, which tracked global food prices of cereals, oilseeds, dairy products, meats, sugars, averaged 97.9 points from 2020, a 3-year high, and a 3.1% rise from 2019 levels. Cereal prices rose 1.1% from November, and for all of 2020 averaged 6.6% over the prior year. The reason for the increase is that export prices for wheat, corn or maize, sorghum, and rice all rose last month due to growing concerns in North and South America and the Russian Federation. Everyone's favorite permabear, SOCGENS, Sockgens, Albert Edwards, who, unlike Goldman Sachs, is starting to worry about soaring food inflation, writes FAO Food Price Index been surging over the last few months. Edwards makes his feelings clear on who ultimately was to blame for the global tidal wave in food inflation back in 2011. Now, pay close attention to this, because if that was happening in 2011, guess how much worse it's going to get now, especially going into the Biden administration with all the printing that they're going to do. Quote, despite Ben Bernanke's denials that the Fed's QE policies caused rampant food inflation or food price inflation in 2011, many economists, such as myself, believe that that was absolutely the case. Edwards summarizes his concerns best with the following statement, quote, even in the richest country in the world, food poverty has become a real problem during this pandemic, end quote. This leaves us with the next imminent food inflation crisis, as central banks are mindlessly injecting a record of $1.4 billion in liquidity into capital markets every single hour. Soaring food inflation may result in social destabilization. The question is, where will it start? So, very important, okay? If that was going on in 2011 with the Federal Reserve, starting the experiment with quantitative easing, how much worse is going to be now that we're into, over $23 trillion in spending, where we are putting all this money into the global markets every single hour, where if we continue to spend, we're going to hit over $50 trillion by 2025, or, towards the end of Biden's term. How much food prices are going to increase? That is the reason why you have to make sure that you start right now creating your own farm in your own backyard, to start making your own supply chain in your own backyard. You have to take the steps right now, because all the signs are there. Okay, so we started this podcast talking about how people have this gut feeling, thinking that things are going to get bad, and they're preparing. Okay, again, the American mentality is, how much can I buy to offset a couple weeks, maybe even a couple months of the supply chain or whatever may happen to destabilize the country. And then when things settle, or when my preps are starting to run out, that's when the things are going to settle. We have to change the mind of that, right? We have to change the thinking of that, because now we have to move from how much can we consume, what can we spend, how much can we store, to how much can we produce, all right? And then we shifted to the second biggest economy in the world. They're having food inflation problems. And now we're having problems as well, because of all the buying that China is doing, from all the weather events that's happening everywhere, and now throwing into the mix how much money we're printing. So that is the reason why this podcast is going to be very long, because all of these are tied together. Okay, this is the end of this first podcast. Now I'm going to show you a video that is going to be the beginning of the second video. So if you already got this far, whether you listen to this through the speaker platform, through YouTube, to brighteon.com or whatever it is, please come back for the next one, because I'm going to continue to talk about this. I will make an introduction for each video, but all of this is going to be in, a continuation for me, and it's going to be a new episode for you. So please share this information with your friends and family. Subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, visit the ManMadeSurvival store. Help this podcast by you making a purchase, because, I also have a job. I make $12 an hour. I work 40 hours a week, and I'm doing this in the time where I'm free. And I'm making sure that I'm bringing this information to this community of preppers. So you can either go to ManMadeSurvival store and make a purchase to kind of help me out with that, or you can visit our patreon.com page and also make a donation there. So I would really appreciate if you did one of those two things. But even if you did not want to help me with money, with financially, you can do the simple act of leaving comments, liking the video, sharing this with friends and family in social media. All this information I talked about should not be censored in any way. But so it's gonna get, it should help or it should have the ability to be distributed everywhere or throughout social medias. So I would really appreciate if you would do that for me. So again, this is the end of this first podcast. Now we're going to move on to the next one, and it's going to start with the listener warrant. So again, my name is Jose Pro, and remember, always ready.
Senator Warren, you tweeted yesterday, quote, with stocks soaring while millions are out of work and struggling to pay bills, it's not news that the stock market doesn't reflect our actual economy. Stimulus checks have been going out, and likely that bigger ones are soon to go out still. And there's been plenty of evidence to suggest some people are using that to invest in the stock market. Is that what their main intention is? Are you happy for people to do that if that's what they wish to use their stimulus checks for? Or does it sort of accentuate a little bit the problem you referred to of the sort of two-speed economy that you referred to in your tweet?
Look, right now, we are suffering through a K-shaped recovery. The people at the top are getting richer and richer and richer. And people who make less than $40,000 a year are now suffering through 20% unemployment. They're getting poorer and poorer and poorer. We've been talking about wealth inequality in this country for several years now. This pandemic could accelerate it at a rate that we had never even imagined in our worst nightmares. Right now, what the stimulus checks are about are getting money into the hands of people who need it and getting that money into our economy to support it. You know, the economy is struggling right now. The economic indicators from October to November, they were worse in November than in October. They were worse in December than in November, and we're not through January yet, but it looks like they're going to be worse in January than they were in December. This economy is in trouble, but the stock market, which has become the giant casino and the playground for the billionaires, just keeps spinning upward. That means that our real economy has become completely, or not completely, but has really become detached from where the stock market is. And the real economy right now is suffering. Stimulus checks are a way to deal with that.
But Senator Warren, I mean, surely the market is not the economy, and the market also reflects the great optimism that is out there around the vaccines, around the robust growth that we are looking at in the second half of the year, the tremendous amount of stimulus from the Federal Reserve and from you and the federal government, including potentially another $1.9 trillion. I mean, surely that's reflected in the market. It's not necessarily all the casino, is it?
Well, look, we have to understand what's happening in this economy. I mean, did you hear me? A 20% unemployment rate for people making less than $40,000 a year. Women that have been blocked out of their jobs, who are suffering from unemployment more than anyone else because they've had to pick up two jobs at once, one at home and still trying to be in the workplace at the same time. Child care centers that are closed so that people can't go back to work. Right now, Republicans who are saying they don't want to see us put up the money that we need that's in President Biden's plan. Money for vaccines, money for families that need to put food on the table, and money to get our schools open. Now, look, I think we've got a lot of tools and a lot of things we can do, and I want to see us do those things. But we need to have our feet firmly on the ground. And firmly on the ground means acknowledging that tens of millions of people across this country are out of work. Tens of millions more are on the threshold of losing either their homes or their apartments. Tens of millions more have depleted their savings and don't have enough money to put food on the table. That is a core part of the American economy, and that's where Congress needs to respond, and we need to respond quickly and forcefully.
The Man-Made Survival Show.